So good morning, everyone. In- So again, we will start as usual with a short breathing exercise, mindful breathing exercise, to quiet, to calm our mind, to bring our mind in moment present. And then on the basis of that quiet mind, then we'll try to generate positive, good intention for being here. And then we will start today's subjects, the topic, new topic that we will be starting from today. Okay. So try to relax, make yourself comfortable. Let go of any stiffness, tightness in your body, in your mind. Try to keep your back straight. It helps to be more alert, awake. And as you inhale and exhale naturally, try to keep your mind or attention observing the breath and being aware of that. Simply just observing and being aware. If you find your mind wandering off, distracted, recognize, be aware, and always bring back to the breath. Once your mind has settled down, then we can think, contemplate. If we don't learn the tools to deal with the mentally, emotionally, with different situations, we will always find challenges, difficulties, problems, obstacles, overwhelms our mind. Because our life, our experiences, our emotions, as well as other people's life, emotions, views, as well as the environment. Everything's constantly changing. They're not permanent. And when there are changes, if we don't know how to manage, deal with that, then it can be a lot of stress, a lot of pain. Sometimes anger, bitter, resentful. All of this can happen and disturb our mind and make our life miserable, unhappy. But if we have the tools how to deal with all of those changes, especially changes that we don't want to see, if we have the tools to deal with that mentally, emotionally, then we can manage and handle better, more healthy. Without going through all these painful feelings. In order to develop those tools, the mind training, we need to learn, study about those tools, those meditation practices. And not only learn, but learning is one thing, but putting them into practice another thing. And we need to put them into practice what we have learned. For that very reason that I'm going to listen to this topic of training the mind, Lojong. And by all of us coming here together to listen, to engage in discussions, contemplating on those, what we have heard, due to all of that, May all of this become cause and conditions to awaken our mind, awaken ourselves. And may it become cause and condition to achieve our highest potential, fully awakened state, so we can be greatest help, benefit to all sentient beings and oneself. Okay.
Taking refuge in generating bodhicitta once in English and twice in Tibetan. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Sangye choran soki chonam la chonchu bardu dagni kapsuchi dagi chonen gepe sonam gi drola penshir sangye drupa sho sangye choran soki chonam la chonchu bardu dagni kapsuchi Dagi chonen ge petso namgi drola penshir sange drupa sho.
So again, good morning, everyone. Again, thank you for joining this morning. And the topic of the talk, starting from today, is what is known as Lojong in Tibetan, which means mind training, thought transformations. And those Lojong teachings and practices, of course, come from the Buddha Shakyamuni. You find the source of those teachings in different sutras. Maybe all of them might not be in one sutra, but some of them you find in different sutras. And then it will compile by the later Indian masters, and put together, to make it easy for us, instead of finding each one practice, going through the whole volume of each of sutra and not knowing where it is. So it makes us more easy for us. And Lojong practice are basically, of course, in the Lojong there are, many practices, but the main center of the Lojong practice are a practice how to transform, challenges, difficulties, problems, sufferings into something more meaningful, to transform them into the path, transforming the obstacle into the opportunity, transforming the suffering into happiness, transforming, problems into the path for your spiritual growth. So it is a different meditation, different way of thinking, different way of looking at the situation, and thereby, transforming in that way. So that is one of the main, the main of those Lojongs. And of course, there are so many different Lojong texts composed by different teachers, masters. The one we are going to follow is called 7-Point of Mind Training, and it is by one of the Tibetan masters, Katamba Geshe Chekawa. So it's probably around, 11, 12 centuries, and he wrote this text, 7-Point of Mind Training, based on one of the earliest texts. Is only 8 verses of mind training by Geshe Langritamba. So the author, Geshe Chekawa, he was very inspired by the 8 verses mind training. One time he was traveling to someone's home, and he heard someone reciting one of the verses from that 8 verses. And one of those verses says, I offer all the victory to others. I take all the defeat on myself. When he heard that, he felt it was very radical, and it caught his attentions, this very radical way of thinking. Because normally we all want victory for ourselves. We don't want the defeat on ourselves. And we want others to take the defeat, not ourselves. And we want a victory to ourselves and to not give to others. But this one is saying, may I be able to take all the defeat on myself, offer the victory. It was kind of, it really caught his attentions. So he wanted to learn more about that. What does that mean? What is it about? This kind of totally very radical way of thinking. And so he found out with that person who was what you are reciting, what it is, and he explained, this from the 8 verses mind training. And who is the master who composed, and said Geshe Langritamba. And so he wanted to go and meet the master and learn from master what it is about and about this kind of training. And when he went, by the time Geshe Langritamba has already passed away. So he was a little disappointed that he couldn't meet the master who had composed this. And so he was asking, is there any other masters or his disciples, teachers who have transmissions and teachings on this, and then someone says, one of the Geshe, Geshe Chekawa, one of the Kadamba masters, Geshe Chekawa. And when he went to see Geshe Chekawa, it happened to be that Geshe Chekawa was giving some talk to an audience. And he stayed in the talk with hope that he will talk about something about this Lojong, Throughout the talk, he didn't hear anything about that because he was teaching on some other subjects, He was a little disappointed. He was a little disappointed that he came to study and learn more about this teaching, and someone directed him towards this teacher who said he has all this teaching, transmission, everything's. But not to hear any word from him, he was a little disappointed, you know. And later, when the talk finished, he went to see him personally, and then inquiry about that, whether he has all these transmissions, the teachings, and all of that. And Geshe Chekawa said, yes, he has all these transmissions, he himself practiced that, and he had been practicing, he had all this transmission and all of that. And he said, but why didn't you say anything during this talk? You didn't even mention anything about that. And he said, what is the point of mentioning that if nobody practice? And that is what he said, You can talk about it, but if people doesn't practice, you lose the point of that, And so that was the answer he gave at that point. And, he make he pay respect, vow, and then he really request him that he was very interested in learning more about those teaching practices. And Geshe Chekawa showed his sincerity in that, that he was really sincere in that he wanted to really learn. He was really, it is not like someone who is just trying to collect some kind of knowledge, but someone who seems very sincere about the practice, wanting to learn and practice it. And so he felt that this was the right persons, so then he gave teachings, and he studied under him for many years, not only study, practice himself, and he become really good at those practices, because not only he studied, he really put into the practice. And later, then he composed this 7-point mind training. So it's based on the 8 verses mind training, but it's not like a kind of normal commentary where it go verse by verse, word by word. But he took the essence from that. He took all the essence from those 8 verses of mind training, and then he put those essence into the 7-point, and that is why it's called 7-point of mind training. And he present from the 7-point of 7 different point. Okay, so that is a little bit about this, the author and the text itself. Okay, and there are few different versions, and the versions, older versions, sometimes training into bodhicitta, training in ultimate bodhicitta and conventional bodhicitta. In some of the early translations or early versions, training in the ultimate bodhicitta come first, and conventional bodhicitta come later. But the one we are using is based on Paponga's Rinpoche, and in the conventional bodhicitta come first, and ultimate bodhicitta later. The presentation is slightly different. In terms of sequences, there's otherwise no difference, and it's based on like Lamrims and all that, where conventional bodhicitta is presented first, based on that. And so that is just a small kind of technical. And as you can see, it's only 4 pages, not even 4 pages. I think 3 pages. No. 2.5 pages. It's short, in terms of short, but it is it contains the whole main essence of the Mahayana teachings. In the practice. So I hope you have as I mentioned before, it's good to read yourself at home and then go through that. Or if you want, sometimes people just want to really listen, But at least you go home and you can listen again in the tube, and you can, if you need to write some notes, you can write notes so that you don't forget some of the things that you feel you find helpful. Because if we don't keep those notes, or if we don't try to contemplate, meditate, we forget, So again, those can be something that, and as I mentioned, if you can have even some discussions, it helps too, So if you go to the actual text itself, is page number 3, and then it's start with the homage to the great compassions. And again, when you talk about homage to great compassions, we can understand 2 things, Definitive meaning of compassions and interpretive meaning of compassions. So in here, the interpretive meaning of compassions to whom the homage is paid is the Avalokiteshvara, the Buddha of compassions. So Avalokiteshvara, the Buddha of compassions, because this subject is related more with the compassions, even though it does call for both method and wisdom, but it's mostly on the method, the compassion side, and therefore pay homage to the deity that possess or that represent the highest quality of that compassions. That is and in terms of definitive meaning of the compassion, then it refers to the actual great compassion itself. Also in one of the other great Indian masters, Chandrakirti, in his supplement to middle way, he also start with paying homage to the compassions by saying compassion is very important at the very beginning, very important in the middle, and very important in the end, all the time. And therefore, I pay homage to the compassion, great compassions. And he mentions at the very beginning, great compassion is very important because it's like the seed to grow the plant or the fruit or vegetable plant. It's like the seed. You need the compassion to enter, like the seed, to enter the Bodhisattva's path, the Mahayana path. That's the very beginning of entering the Bodhisattva path. So it's like the seed. At the very beginning, you need that. In the middle, is very important, like the water. So in order to the tree to grow, you keep on watering. It's not enough you just plant one seed and then you don't water it, then it will die. It will not grow. The seed will not grow. The plant will not grow if you don't keep on watering it. So in the middle, in order to maintain the seed so that it can produce the plant, you need to keep on watering it. In the same way, even after we enter the Mahayana path, the Bodhisattva path, you need to continue to practice compassion continuously, like the watering. Otherwise, you can go back. You can lose great compassion. You can lose and deteriorate your compassions, and you can lose the Mahayana path, the Bodhisattva path. It's just if you stop watering for 1 year, the tree will die. So you need to continue to give water. The same way you continue to practice, meditate, and practice on compassion, great compassion in the middle. At the end is importance. He said, at the end of planting the plant is to enjoy the fruit or vegetables, whatever, or the flowers. You plant it, so after some time, there's a beautiful flower that you enjoy, or there's a vegetable or fruit that you enjoy. That is at the end, the result. Same way, when one achieves the ultimate goal of the path, the Bodhisattva path, Mahayana path, the ultimate goal is to achieve fully awakened state. And the ultimate goal of achieving fully enlightened state is so that you can be beneficial or help and benefit sentient beings. That is the goal, to achieve that enlightenment or fully awakened state, so that you can help benefit sentient beings in the best way, without limitations, in the most skillful way, in according to need of each individual sentient beings. So what makes them to act after they have achieved enlightenment, to act to help benefit sentient beings, is the compassion. If they don't have compassion, then because they don't have suffering anymore, they are free from all the suffering, all the obscuration, you can just bliss out. You can just bliss out. It's because there's so much bliss. That's what a lot of arhats does for a long time. When they achieve nirvana, that they have been free from all the suffering permanently, the cause of all the suffering, delusion. And so there is so much peace, bliss in that nirvana, and they can be in that deep bliss out in that state for a long time. But the bodhisattvas, someone like 8 Bhumi bodhisattvas, after the 8 Bhumi, after 8 Bhumi, they also eliminate all the delusions. Just like Arhat, they have no delusions. And so they can also bliss out for eons and eons, but they don't stay in that bliss out state, all those bodhisattvas and Buddha, because the great compassion does not allow them to do that. How can they be bliss out in that state when there is so much sentient beings who are suffering and who need help? So it's that compassion that kind of, draw them to help and benefit sentient beings. And that is because of that is important at the end. So that's paying homage to great compassion. And great compassions, I think we might have to distinguish few compassions. Emotional compassions and true compassions that come through training, practice. And even within that, there can be 3 levels of compassion: true compassion, immeasurable compassion, and great compassions. Emotional compassions that we all experience, sometimes even the animal experience. You don't have to train, you don't have to meditate, you don't have to train. You know, when you see someone suffering, you feel it naturally. We might not feel all the time, but we feel time to time. And you can see that expression of compassion, that emotional compassion, even among animals. When another animal is sick, dying, you can see other animals trying to help. Other animals who feel that pain. There are some videos, when another elephant is died, all other elephants, are kind of feeling the pain, trying to see whether they can bring it out, trying to do things. You see the monkeys and all other different animals, they can feel the pain and suffering of death. They feel that doesn't come through their meditation training. That is what we call emotional compassions. And that emotional compassions is not stable. Not stable. One moment you feel compassion, next moment you feel very upset and angry with that same person, with that same animals. In this moment you feel like, so compassionate, you feel like you are willing to give up your life. Next moment, because that person responds in a certain way and do something, you'll be so upset you are willing to take that person's life. So opposite, it can go. So that kind of compassion is very much unpredictable, unstable. Yeah. So we want to go beyond that. Of course, that compassion can be like a seed, where we can walk on. But we want to go beyond that, where we have more stable compassions, that it doesn't change. It doesn't change based on how other person responds. It doesn't change based on how other person react or not react. It doesn't change based on changing other persons. At the moment, our compassion, that kind of emotional compassion changes. Is compassion there when they behave in certain way, and our compassion no more when they behave in different ways. Our compassion there when they are in certain situation. When that situation change, then again we don't have the compassions. So in change of the situation and the person, all this, our compassion can be arises or not arise, gone. But what we want here is to develop a compassion where it's stable. Once you develop that compassion, it doesn't change how they respond or not respond. Whether they change or not change, your compassion is always there. Whether they are nice, kind, or whether they are mean, cruel, it doesn't, your compassion still does change. Stable compassions. And that kind of stable compassions come through practice, training, meditations. And then it will come. The basis for such compassions, the basis to develop such compassion and training is because it's not because they are nice to me or not nice to me. It's not because they have been kind to me, not kind to me. It's not based on because they will be kind to me, not kind to me. It's not based on they were nice to my family, friend, or someone or not. But it's based on because they want happiness and they do not want suffering and they're suffering. Okay. Just like myself, I take care of myself. I cherish myself on what basis? Not because I'm kind to myself, because I've been nice to myself, because I will be nice to myself, because I might be helpful to myself. Nothing like that. The only basis, I want to be happy and I don't want suffering. Therefore, on that basis, I cherish myself, I take care of myself to avoid sufferings, to free from suffering and to achieve happiness. That is all. Same, with that same, the cause to develop, the foundation to develop such compassion is based on that person or that sentient beings want to be happy and they do not want suffering. And they have right to be happy, not to suffer, but they are suffering. Once you are able to develop compassion on the basis of that understanding, on the basis of that understanding, on the foundation of such wisdom, understanding that just like myself, they want to be happy and they do not want suffering, and they are suffering. Then, once you develop compassion on that basis, then whether they are nice to you or not, they are still suffering. So the basis for your compassion is still there. Whether they are kind or whether they are mean, still they are suffering. Still they don't want suffering and they are suffering. The basis to feel compassion there, and therefore your compassion doesn't change. Therefore, is of course difficult to develop such compassions through such training. But once you develop such compassion, then it is very stable. True compassion, it doesn't change. So that is compassion, okay? So I wanted to kind of distinguish the normal, ordinary, emotional compassions and the compassion that is built on understanding, wisdom, and through training. And even with such compassions, at the very beginning, your compassion might be, directed toward only few individuals, at the very beginning point of your practice meditations. And that is true compassion, but it's still kind of limited compassions. And slowly, as you expand that feeling, that compassions, slowly to not only your friends, families, but beyond that, to all humankind. Then not only all humankind, towards all animals, not only towards all animals, towards all other beings, towards countless sentient beings, then that becomes immeasurable compassion. The object of compassion is limitless, countless, immeasurable sentient beings. So that is sometimes you find term immeasurable compassions, like when we do the four immeasurable practice, immeasurable love, immeasurable compassion, immeasurable joy, immeasurable equanimity. So in that you find the immeasurable compassions. And then like here in the many of the Mahayana teachings, and here in Lamrim, you find this term great compassions. So what is the great compassions? Different from the immeasurable compassions. The great compassion is again that true compassion, but it includes each and every sentient beings without excluding any sentient beings. Great in the sense it includes each and every sentient beings in the object of compassion. No one is excluded. Not one being is excluded. In that sense, the great compassions. on another level, the great compassion is that, not only you wish the others to be free from the sufferings by seeing their sufferings, you have this incredible compassionate mind. You sincerely want them to be free from the sufferings. But in great compassion, not only you feel that, then you feel the responsibility to do that. Taking the responsibility that I will free them all from the suffering. So it's little more stronger, more high level, taking responsibility. Not only you feel their suffering and you want them to be free from suffering, but actually taking that responsibility that I myself will free them from their sufferings and cause of suffering. That becomes the great compassion. So that is homage to the great compassions. That's the homage. I think it is a little bit technical, but I think sometimes it's good to know that subtle differences. Sometimes it is, if we don't know differences, subtle differences, sometimes we might be thinking that I've developed compassions when you have not really developed this compassion, what they were talking about. Maybe you have these emotional compassions, and then we started to think, oh, I've developed realization of compassions, there's a difference between that. And there's a difference between immeasurable compassion and great compassion as well. There's a difference between bodhicitta and great compassion. Otherwise, again, you hear a little bit, you study a little bit, but you don't know all this subtle, and sometimes you might think, same with emptiness. If you don't really know, and then you have some experience, which sounds like you have a realization of emptiness, and then we might think that we have realization of emptiness, when it is not. And that could happen with shamatha too. There have been meditators who have confused the subtle laxity when to be a shamatha, so it can happen, And His Holiness Dalai Lama and many others teachers also shared some students coming and asking them, do you think I've achieved this? I've experienced of this and this. And when they really check it, it's not. And they say sometimes it's hard for them, so it's not, because they will be so disappointed or all of that. But it's not. But then they heard a little bit description of that, little bit here and there, and it sounds like that. But sometimes if you don't study enough to understand all the subtle differences, so sometimes we can get confused, and especially if you don't have a really qualified teacher that you can actually ask, then sometimes we might think that we have those realizations when we don't, and then that can be another problem, So sometimes it doesn't seem like we don't need to go too precise, too technical, all this, but at the same time, sometimes it is important, Then next, it says the essence of this nectar of secret instructions is transmitted from the master, from the Sumantara. So this one explaining where does this teachings, instruction come from. So the lineage, talking about where it was coming, passed through lineage, So the essence, meaning here, essence of this nectar. Nectar is something that is explained. Of course, one of the nectar is, immortal, deathless, and the fully awakened one is the one, who have overcome that deathless state. deathless state of that nectar, you know. And these instructions is the path that lead to that deathless state or fully enlightened state. Therefore, the path, this practice is mentioned here, the mind training is the essence or the path that lead to that deathless state of nectar, of secret instructions. And it's called secret instructions, some of those practice, in that you find here, such as Tonglen, and when you do the Tonglen or taking and giving seriously, it might not be a cup of tea for everyone. Let's say that way. In the Tonglen practice, you try to take everyone's suffering and cause of suffering on yourself. You try to send and give all your happiness, all your virtues, all your wealth, everything to others. That might not be so easy for some people. They might struggle and they might be overwhelmed by that. They might feel overwhelmed by that. And therefore, those teaching was kind of passed more kind of secretly in the past, according to the disciples who are more suitable, ready for that, and who have that kind of courage to do that, In the past, the way it is done, traditionally long, and many in the past, the teacher will give some instructions, and you go and practice until you achieve from that instructions. Only then you will be given the next instructions. Again, you go and work with that, which means it could take weeks, months, years. Once you have done and you accomplish that, and then you will come to the teacher, and then again, teacher will give the next instructions, like that, And that is where it becomes so alive, because not only you study, first you study, you learn, and then you really keep on practicing that, until you have achieved the result from that. And so in those cases, then and that is one thing, so that is why you find secret instruction. Also in 8 verses of mind training, there is also similar. You find this word secret. That is why it is called, it is said, sometimes it's like, yeah, okay. And such secret instructions of the Lojong, mind training instructions, these are transmitted from Buddha Shakyamuni, the Buddha himself, and you find in some sutras, there is sutra Jambe number of a door, Benju if I can. Menjushiri Bikritita Sutra, you find in that. Also, you find in the Sutra of Ere Tree. Also, there are other 2 sutras, source. You find those Lojong in those, different sutras. And then you find that in later, Nagarjuna's precious garland, little bit of those Lojong, even though there's not so much detail, but there's some those lojongs in Then you find in the materials, Dodekan, the ornament of sutras, asangas, changsa, bodhisattvas, bhumi, and you find in Shantidevas, guides both a way of life. So if you go in early Indian masters, from the Buddha Shakyamuni, Nagarjuna, Maitreya, Asanga, you find in all of them some of those Lojong trainings. And then you also find in later masters, such as Adisha Divamkara, who brought those teachings to Tibet around 10, 11 centuries, And he received all these transmissions from this master from Sumatra in Tibet and in Lama Sedlingpa, and now if you look where the area is in Indonesia, that where Adisha master from whom he received all these instructions is the master was in Indonesia now, place now is part of Indonesia, and especially in Sumatra. That is why, And the stories goes, Adisha heard about that master, and he wanted to have all these instructions. Adisha was already very learned and high realized being even at that time. He studied in Nalanda, and also he was also in Bikram some of the top universities at that time. And he was, but he didn't have all the transmissions. In terms of knowledge, he had those knowledge, even some realizations on that, but he didn't have the transmissions, and he felt the importance of those transmissions. In order to receive all those transmissions, he left India to Indonesia in a boat. It took him 13 months with some other peoples. And you can imagine during those times, 10, 11th century, the boat are not such big and safe like now, So he take all these risks. For what? To receive those instructions, the transmission of those instructions. So early masters, they emphasize very so strongly on importance of the transmissions. Nowadays, that doesn't seem to be important. You just have book, you just read it, you just watch YouTube, and you just do it. Either we are very smart, or whether those master was very stupid, or we are not doing something correctly. And sometimes I wonder, you hear a lot of realized being before, but now we hear less people of realized people. Even though there are a lot of people who are meditating, practicing. Because I think maybe we are losing some part of that. It doesn't just come through just reading and just meditating. You need that transmissions, the direct, transmissions. Maybe that is what we are missing. That is why. So anyway, Adisha spent that, and then there he studied for many, many years, and then brought all these transmissions back in India and then to Nepal. And through Nepal to Tibet. And from Adisha, then all this, the Tibetan masters, the Kadamba masters, Dromdemba, and then, Langri Thamba, who composed 8 verses of mind training, and they received directly, and Sharawas. And from Geshe Chekawa, then this master, Geshe Chekawa, received. So that is what he's saying. All these instructions, there's a direct, unbroken transmissions. And I feel transmission importance, as I said, even someone like His Holiness Dalai Lama, especially, I can't say for everyone, but especially for Tibetan Buddhism, is the most highest teacher, but not just because he's a high teacher, but in terms of his knowledge, in terms of his realizations, in terms of his understanding of the Buddha Dharma, in terms of embodying those teachings, he's the most kind of highly regarded and respected teachers, most enlightened teachers. But even him, he received many transmissions from many other teachers, sometimes even from ordinary monks. That ordinary monk doesn't have more knowledge than him, doesn't have more realization than him, but what he had was transmissions, which his only Dalai Lama didn't have. And he wanted to receive that transmissions. So he made an effort to take transmission from a very ordinary monk and took him as a teacher to receive that transmissions, not because he has more knowledge to share, that he has more realization than him, but he had a transmission which his holiness the Lama didn't have. He really wanted that. He found the importance of that. And in some transmission, in Tibetan Buddhism, there are many, many teachings where transmission is already broken. So now you cannot renew it because it is already broken. But there are many teachings still unbroken transmission. And that is what His Holiness tried to also, and some of those who was, if he didn't take that from that, it can be broken. Once that monks die, there's no way he can pass to someone, that will die. That lineage will die in terms of transmission, direct transmission. So he took that transmission himself, and then he gave transmission to many other people so that it can survive. And in one month, he took some transmission, and then there were some transmission. His Holiness was very interested. And he said that monk, because he heard there was another person in Tibet, and it was not even a monk, I think it was a lay person, but who had received that transmission, direct transmission, what happened. Send the monk to get that transmission and come back so that again he can receive that. These are the importance those masters pay, And that is why even here when he write, why did he say is it transmitted from the master of Sumatra? Why did he have to mention here? Because he see the importance of this unbroken direct transmissions. And that is something that we have to keep in mind. Sometimes I see students, it's good, but it will be better, like doing in practice, preliminary practice, different practices, different teachers might have given them, but they just do it, they just get the booklet and they just do it instead of getting some transmissions from someone who have those transmissions. If you can get a commentary, it's wonderful. And if you can get extensive commentary, good. Even if you cannot get extensive commentary, at least you get short commentary. Even if you don't have short commentary, at least you have the direct oral transmission. It's very important. To have if it's only about knowledge, knowing, then it's not important. You can learn that, whether you have transmission or not, from reading a book, self-studies, reading books, listening to the YouTube. You can learn a lot of things. You can have all this knowledge. But if you really want to have spiritual realizations through those practice, those transmissions are one of crucial, important things. All the master, all the teachers, master I know, even Lama Sopa Rinpoche, he has so many teachers, and the reason is because he wanted to receive those oral transmissions. from different master. This master, this order transmission, but he didn't have that one particular instruction. The other one had different transmissions. So, and necessarily in those transmissions, it is not necessarily that they are giving more explanations or all of that, but it is just the direct transmissions. And so all my teachers and all those senior monks and lamas, they pay huge attention and effort and in receiving themselves those transmissions and giving the transmissions for those who are interested and all of that. And again, that because of that importance of that, So, in the tradition, in the old times, when someone gives some practice to do, normally the teacher will give them the commentary, if not commentary, transmissions. And then they will go and do, They will give the transmissions. Even if you are working with a preliminary, they give the transmissions and a little bit of commentary, a little bit of explanation how to do, and they work and do, and they finish one of those practice, and they come back, report, and they will check and give advice, and then they will give the next transmission for the next preliminary practice. And then again, they ask them to do, Or in some cases, if you don't have access all the time, then you receive all the transmission, all the different preliminary that, and that's how. So anyway, I think because of this, I just wanted to. Of course, it is individual for us to make sense of it or not, whether it makes sense or not, whether it's important or not. But it's my duty to share how those masters pay such an importance to those direct transmissions. Because I'm also sharing, because here also, he has transmitted from the master from the Sumatra, that's where he's talking about this unbroken direct transmissions. Okay. And then next is, okay. So this explain, authenticity of these teachings, how it is passed through Buddha Shakyamuni indirectly, and unbroken from one master to another master. Authenticity. And you can, if you go and read those sutras, you will find those there. It's not that. If you go to Nagarjuna's writing, you will find those some teaching there. Shantideva, all you go back to the sutra, you will find. If you read those sutras that mentioned here, few sutras, you will find those. You might not find all is described all in one sutra, but you will find some of them in that sutras. So again, it is to help us to see the authenticity of the source of those teachings. So, so that is why normally they explain a little bit of that, and secondly, it explains the qualities of this instruction itself. So here is revealing the features of the doctrine or these instructions to engender respect for the instructions. If you understand the qualities of this particular instructions of the Lojong, then, we might have more respect and more interest and more inspirations to learn and to study and to practice. And so there in the root text, it says, you should understand the significance of these instructions as like a diamond, the sun, and medicinal tree. So here is give 3 examples. And diamond, it says, diamond is that something, precious stone, something that even is broken, is more valuable than the gold. Diamond, even is broken into pieces, still that one small pieces of diamond is more valuable than the gold. it overwhelmed the other materials, such as gold, silver, other things. Similarly, even we cannot practice all the instructions that is presented in this Lojong. Even you practice even one small part of it, like the broken diamond, small broken diamond. Even you are able to practice one small part of those instructions, it would be very powerful to overwhelm the selfish attitude, the self-centeredness, which is the root of all the conflict, all the problem. Even though sometimes we think the cause of problem is someone else, if we are honest with ourselves, if we are willing to look inside ourselves deeply, we find the problem is not that. The problem is your own selfish attitude, the self-centeredness, your own self-cherishing mind. And so therefore, the Lojong practice of, to reduce and to destroy that selfish attitude is one of the main point of practicing is to do that too. So it's like that. The sun, if the full sun is the full sun, of course, it will dispel all the darkness. But even the sun is obscured by the cloud, and even there is only small part of the sun, it can still dispel the darkness. In the same way, if we can practice full instruction of all this Lojong, definitely we can overcome, destroy the selfish attitude and many others. But even you practice even small sections or a small part of that instruction, again, it will be able to dispel and destroy the selfish attitude. Medicinal trees, example. If there is a medicinal tree where every part of them is medicine, then of course, if you use that, you can heal a lot, But even you take one part of that, one leaf, and you use that to cure, even that can cure. In the same way, even we are unable to practice all these instructions, but if you can practice even just one part of that, it can cure the illness of selfish attitude. So that is what is giving. That is the power of this instruction. If we practice correctly, those Lojong practice correctly, in the right way, it has that potential power to do that. This time of degeneration will then transform into the path to fully awakened state. And like in many spiritual paths, you find in Hinduism, also in the Buddhist, talking about degeneration times, in 5 degenerations, degeneration time, degeneration sentient beings, degenerations, afflictive emotions, and then I don't know if I can remember. Degeneration of the life and degeneration of the view. In those 5 degeneration time, it's much more harder to practice the Dharma. It's much more harder to practice the Dharma. In terms of the delusions, in those degeneration time, delusions are more strong and it lasts more intense. Delusion has always been there before, even not degeneration time, but during the degeneration time, they are more strong, more intense, and they last longer. Sometimes we do feel that way, isn't it? A little bit, Degeneration time, where there's so much quarrel, fight, conflict. The time is such that there is so much quarrel, there's so much fighting among ourselves, there's so much conflict, And degeneration life is when over the time, when lifespan get reduced, and degeneration sentient beings are that, it come a time when it's degenerating time where sentient beings are hard to subdue, discipline, subdue, Sometimes it feels like now we become too materialistic and, seems to be sometimes becoming less compassion, becoming is all after running after all the wealth and all these things, losing a lot of value that we used to have, human values, the value, community values, helping each other, supporting each other, taking care of elders, taking care of those who are vulnerable in the need of that, all these good qualities, compassionate qualities, seems like they are losing more and more. We are becoming more and more like mission, emotionless, just running and doing things, accomplish things. That is all it is about. The emotion, the feeling part is getting more and more. And that it says it happens in those degeneration times of the sentient beings, I don't know we are exactly in that degeneration, but sometimes it feels like a little bit like that when you see that, and then, degeneration views, again, during the degeneration view, then, people started to have view, of extreme views, extreme views, such as, my actions have no consequences. Who care about my actions? As long as I don't get in trouble, as long as I don't get caught by the law and police, who cares? What happened to others? And like that, in that kind of, views, instead of, whether law catch me or not, whether catch me, but it's not correct. Such actions, if its consequences is harmful to someone, is harming someone, I shouldn't engage in that. I shouldn't do that. So, instead of that kind of view that support kind and compassionate persons, the view that make you less compassionate, less kind, less empathy, all of that. So that is the view where in degeneration, it can become like that times. And in such degeneration times, if we can apply, because in this generation time, there's a lot of more challenges. Because of this generation, there's more challenges, more problems, more conflict, more sufferings. In those times is this instruction, Lojong, who are most powerful, beneficial tools to transform all these difficulties, challenges, the problem into the path to awakening. Is those practices become so powerful, for growth of your spiritual progress, your spiritual path, if we can practice and if we can put in the right practice. And so that is the qualities of the instructions, the Lojong. Okay? So any questions? Yes, please. Can-
You talked a lot about transmission, and I'm not sure that I completely understand it. It sounds like, and you use the example of the Dalai Lama, that it's a higher level of learning, perhaps, than just imparting knowledge. Could you give us an example of a transmission?
Yeah.
Or are we collectively at a level to receive transmissions?
Yeah, I think orally, if there is interest from the student side, if there is it has to come from their heart. If they understand the importance of that, and with that understanding, if they feel inspired and inspired to receive, and if there is then I think that should be enough conditions or qualification to receive some of those, at least some of those, oral transmissions. Of course, there are different levels of transmissions. The empowerment are one kind of high level of transmissions. Then there are other transmissions which are, we call lung, oral transmission plus the explanations. And then on basic level, there is the oral transmissions of the scripts. So whatever text or scriptures that one is studying, one is using for meditation and practice, whatever sadhana, whatever text, whatever book that one is using for one's meditation, one's practice, one's studies, then to have that oral transmission is the teachers read that orally and everyone listen and they hear. And of course, so far, when you are doing by the Tibetan masters, they do in Tibetans. But I think eventually, once you receive that in your Tibetan orally, directly, transmission, you also probably to transmit in a different language, I think it wouldn't be difficult as long as that the transmissions, your direct transmission, that you are actually receiving directly in the person from the teachers. Yeah. So it is. So as one caution, yes, definitely is not only about knowledge. As I said, for knowledge you can learn, but it's about inner transformations, what we call spiritual experience, spiritual realizations. And to have that spiritual realization, transformations, and realization, spiritual experience. And that's where the transmission become important. It's just for knowledge, then I think maybe it's not so important.
So, Geshe, I don't know about others here, but I certainly have a resistance to developing bodhicitta, and I could use all the blessings that I could get. So, Geshe, would you give us the transmission of this text? Because I know you have it, because otherwise you wouldn't be teaching from it. So just to get the blessings, to be able to generate some of these realizations in this life and in the future, maybe for us.
Yeah, I think
Would a kata help, Geshe-la?
I, I think definitely when we are trying to receive transmissions, direct transmissions, definitely it will always be better. You have more awakening, more enlightened, more qualified masters, teachers. Maybe hopefully we might be able to get some of those teachers, masters to give that. I think that is one of the reasons why we had some others high teachers coming, giving some empowerment, some other things for that purpose. But again, there are situations where you cannot find it, then you have to deal with that. Then you have to deal with that some things, the most cheap ones. Most. So if you cannot find the made in America, you have to buy the Chinese one. And so in some cases, it might be that one, and we will see. We will see at the end of that, because the transmission doesn't take too much. And also, I have to make sure I have these transmissions. I know I have received some Lojong transmission Lama Sopa Rinpoche, and I have ticked some of them. I have to make sure that I have. This is not part of the transmission that I got from His Holiness, and those are the different texts, different subjects of 18 Lamrim. But specifically, I do have some transmission of some of the Lojong, but not all of them, and I have to check it. Okay. Any other questions?
Geshe-la, we have two online. First of all, T. Joy wrote, "Thank you, Geshe-la, for these important reminders today of the Noble Eightfold Path. The path of oneness is that of true compassion for all sentient beings without exception." So T. Joy thanks you. And then Amanda, would you like to unmute? Thank you.
Geshe Sherab, you were speaking about Tonglen, and so when a person is experiencing suffering, they can say, may this experience be me taking the suffering for all sentient beings, so that they don't have to experience it. And sometimes in that experience, the suffering can be so that you can't think very clearly to be able to say that. And so my question is, when the suffering is not quite so great, is it as effective in hindsight to say, may all of that suffering that I experienced, may it have been taken on to have relieved the suffering of others, or does it have to be done in the moment? Thank you.
Yeah, no, you don't have to deal in moment, in order to do the Tonglen, the practice of taking and giving, you can always do whether you are going through your own suffering or not. We can do that all the times. And whether we are clear about what the suffering is, in our case, as we mentioned, sometimes we don't feel good, but sometimes we don't know exactly what that is, and all of that. And sometimes we have more clarity what we are feeling about it, So it doesn't need to be those kind of very specific, and also it doesn't have to be in that very moment to do that, to do the practice of Tonglen on taking on others' sufferings on yourself, or just as more lighter version by me experiencing it. May no one have to experience. May I be able to experience on behalf of them. in that way. So yeah, it doesn't have to be in the moment. It doesn't have to be very specific. It can be also, yeah, what that practice can be done even without that.
Thank you.
Dedications.
And then just a reminder, we have the 7-point mind training student-led discussion group this Wednesday. Thank you, Venerable, at 5:30 to 6:30. So we can discuss the teachings from today.
So yeah, if anyone is interested to come for 5:30 to 6, is for an hour, you are most welcome. Not hour, half. 1 hour, okay, thank you. And thank you for Venerable for offering that, and who want to come and, discuss about it, sharing what they're understanding, however, that would be nice and good learning too, in the monasteries, our teachers always used to say, your best teachers are your classmates from where you learn from discussions. What you learn from your teachers, then you come into class and then you debate and you discuss about it, openly, without any kind of fear or worry, and so that is where you learn a lot. So they used to say, your classmate is the best teachers. And in the monastery, the classmates are hold very highly like their teachers, okay.
Thank you, Shima. That's okay. We're very grateful for Shayla for Zoom hosting all of the time and screen sharing. Thank you so much, Shayla, and the other host team, and also T-Joy and Lou. What would we do without our Zoom hosts? Okay, dedication prayers. May all beings everywhere plagued by the sufferings of body and mind obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then, may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. And then a long life prayer for His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. Gangri rawe korwe jinkam dir pendan dewa malu jungwe ne chen raising wa tenzin gatso yi jape si te bardu tengyur chi.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Thank you. Thank you.